finished watercolours for calming florals, and I'm just going to show you just a few of the techniques, recap on them that we did in the class, just so you can remember. So I'll do a few leaves, I'll do some of the flowers, just to jog your memory. So here we go. I've got the bouquet we ended with. So let's start with leaves. We did quite a variety of leaves, and I'm going to get my paper and off we go. So here's my paper, watercolor paper, of course. I'm going to wet my brush. I'm going to do it a little bit bigger with a bigger brush this time so you can see it a bit better on camera. As usual, I've got my palette of paints, which I'm going to wet to activate them before we start. As I said in the class, you know, if you've got a green that's a little bit too bright or emeraldy, you can put a little bit of brown in it just to temper that down. So I'm going to start off with a mixture of my brown and a kind of olive green I've got in the kits that I sent people for this class. And I'm just going to quickly show you the first type of leaf we did. I'm using a round brush. This is a size 5, but in the class we used a smaller one, but I'm just going to use a bigger one for demonstrating here so you can just see. First of all, I put the tip of my brush down and I can pull and lift again. You can see that. Tip of the brush down, press with some pressure and pull up. And you can see you can extend that little leaf. We get a nice subtle leaf shape that is slightly tapered at one end. So point the brush down, pressure down and pull up. Point the brush down, pressure, pull up again. And you get a nice, just a nice elegant kind of leaf. I'm going this direction, but of course I can go the other direction by moving my hand around. So you can see pressing down and pulling up. None of these leaves are always uniform and the same, but that's the beauty of them. In nature, leaves aren't all exactly the same, but they're basically the same type. So pressing down with my brush at the tip, down, down heavier and pulling up. And you can see now my leaves are going in the opposite direction. Tip of the brush, pull down and up. Going the other direction, go back up to here, tip down, pull down. Turn my hand around to do this. Of course, you can turn the paper around, but I like to move my hand around in lots of different angles, as you know. But as I said, if you've got a little bit of arthritis in your thumb or whatever, you might find that a bit difficult. But it's good to practice doing these leaves in different directions. So I'm going to go this way this time. Tip, I'm going sideways. Tip of the brush down, pull down, pull up. Whoops, that one went a bit funny. Tip of the brush down, push down with the whole brush, pull up. You'll probably find that different directions are easier for you, depending on, you know, if you're left-handed or right-handed or how much control you have over your hands. But you can see here I am, I'm just pulling up. Now, of course, I want to do it smaller. I could use a smaller brush or use less of my brush. So I can even do a small version with this brush by just the tip, press down a little bit, push up. So you can see we can get all these lovely leaves. Here's another one going the other way, pushing down and push up, and you get lots of nice variations with these leaves. Now, of course, you can extend the leaf with a little stalk if you like. And again, you know, I might get a smaller brush to do this just to make life a little bit easier. So here's a smaller brush. I think this is about a size 2. And it could be a size 3 or a 0, 0 or a 0 if you've got one in your kits. And just going to extend and have stalks. I can extend them a bit more and join them together to give myself a kind of a little plant. So that's our very basic leaf shape that we can do. And we can do variations with this. Just going to get my brush, my size 5 brush again. And here's some things we can do with exactly this same brush mark. There's sirens going on outside there. You can probably hear them, but just ignore them. I'm going to do a fern. So here we go. To do a fern, I can do a nice curve, or I could do a straight line. Ferns are fun because we can just do that same movement there. We want smaller little moves at the top, And what's good about a fern is everything's symmetrical. You do one leaf one side, one leaf the other. And at the moment I'm doing them this size, but as it gets down towards the bottom, they'll start to get bigger. The leaves often, with ferns, not always, but often, get bigger as you move down. So now I'm pushing the tip of my, oops, I'm off camera there. I'm pushing the tip of my brush there and pulling right down with the whole brush. Same over here, tip down, hold of the brush. That went a bit big, but that's okay. So there's a fern that we can do. It's just I'm running out of room here. So I'm going to do this little one here with a straight fern leaf. So here we go. One at the top, and I can just print this time. I don't even have to do any little curves. I can just print this one if I want to do a smaller fern. So just printing, just tapping down with my brush like so. And if it's a round brush, it should have a little point at the end. You can add a bit more point if you need. So there's the fern again, this time with a straight line. So there are two variations of pretty much the same brush move. You can adapt these as well. So I'm just quickly just get one leaf here, press down, really pull down like so. And this time I can put just some little spikes down the side, just to give me another sort of leaf, but pretty, just a variation, pretty similar. And again, just put some little spikes down that leaf like so. Might put another one there to balance it. And it's a little bit one-sided, so there we go. Here's another sort of leaf. You can also use this move to make bigger leaves. So point down, pull down like before, but do it on the other side as well and pull down like before. So you can do this, I'll get another bit of paper, just do a couple more leaves for you till you get the hang of it. Of course, you can wind back on the tape. So here we go. Push the point there, down, pull, curve around, push the point there, curve around, and I have a leaf. Like so. Obviously not botanical illustrations. It's not a scientific and accurate version of a leaf, but it's an approximation of the sort of leaves we might see around. And I can just pull it down. So you can also do these leaves. You can fill in that little center bit, perhaps with a different color. So if I put a bit of yellow in there, I get a little bit of a wet on wet kind of look, and a bit of yellow and a bit of change in tone. If the leaf's got a bit wonky, I can extend it a bit. And of course, with our leaves, we can also do some wet on wet patterns. I think we did that in the class too. So I can get a secondary color like red or a kind of a crimson, put some color in that leaf and let the wet on wet patterning just take place. I can put a bit more water in if I want to make it a bit more swirly. Maybe it will bloom. If you've done my beginner's watercolor, we look at blooming in more detail. But it's about getting the ratio of water to pigment right. So here we go again. Let's do another one. Curve one way, curve the other, pull down. Tip down, curve one way, curve the other, pull down. It's really a variation on these leaves. So there are leaves. Oh, one more. This one, you can make a long elongated grass-like leaf by just putting the tip of your brush down, pull out, but go for longer than you usually do, and then taper off. Do another one. Tip down, pull down the brush, and then taper off again and go thinner. Tip down, pull down the brush, pull up again and taper. So there are quite a few different leaves that we can achieve with pretty much the same technique. I'm going to use this technique, the same sort of brush stroke, to do some flowers. I'm going to do some flax flowers that we did in class. Here we go. I've got some a very brown, kind of straw brown here, camel brown perhaps, putting some water into it. And I'm just going to, I want a pale version of this, so just a little bit of water with that. And again, put down my brush, pull down like so. It's a leaf, but because it's this color, it becomes a petal. Same over here. You can do 3 or 4 of these together. Depends. They can be a little bit ununiformed. I'll make it a bit paler, this one. Press down, pull out, press down, pull out. Just like the leaves, except when we use color, we just get a flower. And what makes these interesting is when we just add a little bit of colour in them. So I'm going to get a little bit of this brown ochre, just tap. So wet on wet style, I can tap, and that will spread through and give me more variation in my little flower. So I'm going to get a bit more of that again. And again with this flax flower, like so. Very simple, nothing complex. Touch. And as soon as we've done our flowers, what really makes them even more flower-like is by adding the leaves and the foliage. They frame our flowers. So I've got this olive green. You can wait till it's dry if you don't like the wet on wet, but I do like the wet on wet. So I just touch it there and you can see it just starts to spread slightly. Pull down a thin, thin line with the tip of my brush and over here behind the flower. Same with this little flax flower here, and pull down. Whoops, a little bit wobbly there, but doesn't matter. And again, like so. And then once I've got those little stalks in, I can just do some little presses of leaves and just have them framing around these little flax flowers. Not too big. Little leaves like this are perfect. And you can see you start to build up a little plant like so. And I'm just put a few more around there. For fun, you can then add some more stalks if you like to those leaves, let them curve around, and you've got a nice little flax plant using exactly the same brush strokes that we used for leaves. Of course, you can vary the colours. This time I'll do it in orange. So I've got a bit of orange here, and 1, 2, 3. I'll do a three-pronged one now. Bit of blue perhaps this time, just a different color that will contrast nicely. And you can see it spreading through. Add a bit of green to the bottom, and again I can add some little leaves here just to frame it, so you can change the color of this little flower. So nice simple little sprig that you can put into a floral design like we have here. If you remember in class, we put a little sprig of it here on the side of our composition. So that's a fun little flower to have up your sleeve and very pretty. I'm going to now do a very simple little one that we do, little stars, if you remember those from the class. So a bit of blue, just get it across like that, just some little spikes, and you can do them as small as you can get them. My brush is a bit bigger than usual, but I'm just putting in some tiny little star-like flowers, little clusters. They mimic a hyacinth flower. Put a different shade of blue next to them too, just to give a little bit of depth to them. If you put some different shades of blue, it starts to add a little bit of perspective to your flowers. And again, I might pick that yellowy ochre colour, just to dab in the middle of them all, wet on wet style, and that yellow will start to flow right through those little flowers until it's all dry and the water's evaporated, and the yellow will be spread as far as it will go, as far as the water will let it go. I'm going to put in some little leaves with that one, just using the very tip. I want it to be in the scale of my little flowers. I don't want it to be gigantic leaves, that wouldn't be right. It needs just little tiny dabs of leaf. And again, you can see I'm pushing my hand to odd positions behind, backwards, just to get the leaves going in different directions. They shouldn't all go in the same direction. And that's a very pretty little cluster of flowers again that you can use. And again, you can see here I've used them in my main composition. They were quite wet, so they've spread the color quite a bit. Other useful little things to have in your composition, berries are quite good. So I'm going to get a dark bluey purple I've got over here on my palette, and to do circles, the best way to do them if you're not used to doing them is put your brush straight up at a 90 degrees to the paper, like so, and just twirl your brush around. It's good to leave a little bit of white as a highlight, which suggests a bit of reflection on your berries. And again, you know, you can tap it with a bit of colour if you like, wet on wet style, give a bit more depth to that berry. I'll put a bit of red onto this one. And as we know, the colour will only go where it's wet. It won't go where the paper is dry. So those little white bits will remain white, even though I've dabbed it with a bit more red. To finish off the berries, I'll use dark blue. It's quite a nice colour for berries. Oh no, I've already got dark blue, sorry. I'll use a dark maroon for this. you can then just get your brush very tip. You can see how tiny the lines can be, even with a size 5 brush. You can make them pretty small. And I put just a little tip on the end there, as though the berry has come off. And you can do these nice little patterns. And again, this is a really nice little filler when you've got a space in your composition that you think, wow, that just needs a little bit of something, doesn't it? There we go. So that's berries. Of course, you can even add leaves to those if you want. I'm just going to get another piece of paper. Sorry, just grabbing one over here. This one's got a little bit of paint already on it. That doesn't matter. So I'm moving aside those ones. The next one, getting a bit more complex with that flax flower. We can turn that into a fuchsia, which I showed you in class. So this time I'm going to get quite a deep red colour. Colours of fuchsia is often quite a deep marony crimson and a very bright ultramarine blue. So just like leaves, pointing this way, they point downwards. Whoops, I went the wrong way. Pointing downwards like that. I want the point. There we go. So I just go big at the bottom and pull up, like so, and at the bottom I'll do another one there. So I've got this very basic shape. It's the flax flower pointing downwards, except now it's red. It's going to become a fuchsia. So again, pressing down, pulling up, pressing down, pulling up, and they don't have to be symmetrical. They should be a little bit unsymmetrical, a little bit different. These two flowers are quite different, but they still are fuchsias. It's wet. I could let this dry, which might be better. I know that because it's wet, my little blue bell that comes under here is going to run into my red if I go too close. So if you don't want a wet on wet pattern for this, just let the red dry first. I'm going to let it run in together. I don't mind that at the moment. So there we go, a little bit of red's running in there, but I'm not too fussed. So we've got our little bell at the bottom of our fuchsia. This time I get some yellow, and this will be the little pollen stamens that come out of a fuchsia that give it its real little bell quality. And I'm going to get maybe some brown, or I could get a bit of blue again. I'll use a bit of brown this time, just for the little bits of little pollen dots that you get at the bottom of a fuchsia. So that's my basic fuchsia flower, but to make it more like a fuchsia, I also need some leaves. Leaves on a fuchsia tend to be fairly brightish. So I'm going to put, and they kind of hang like bells, don't they? That's the whole thing about a fuchsia. That one's a bit thick, but it doesn't matter. And I just start to put some little leaves at the base of my fuchsia. It's going to run in there a bit wet on wet. Again, if I don't want that to happen, I need to just make sure it's dry before I do this. But I want to get this all these different flowers down, so I'm just going to keep painting. Little stick or stem, little flower pointing out. These little leaves that you get around a fuchsia. If I have lots of leaves behind it and around it, we soon build up the picture of a fuchsia. So the next thing I can do with that, also fuchsias, the leaves tend to be a little bit discoloured and having lots of little colours on them. So I'm going to put a bit of wet on wet, a little bit of red picked up from the flower itself, same colour red, just tap my leaves and let a little bit of wet on wet action happen. And that's some little fuchsias. If I do them on a smaller scale, they'll look more fuchsia-like. I want to make them nice and big for you today so you can see them. So that's fuchsias. We've done berries, we've done leaves. Let's do a little bit of lavender. Lavender, I'm going to use a purple in my kit. If you haven't got purple, a little bit of crimson with a little bit of blue in it, a darker ultramarine blue will give you a fairly decent mauve. Commercial purples tend to be a bit better. So this time I just get little dabs. You can see I'm just dabbing with my brush, probably say about 6 down the bottom, and gradually as it gets taller, this plant is kind of a lavender, but it can also be a buddleia or a lilac flower, depends on what you like. it's kind of a bit generic, but I'm just going to go up, 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 up. You can see some of my purple's a bit darker in tone as I go back to my palette, but I'm going to go, I might put a bit more water with it so it's a bit paler. Just going round. I'm going to make this one curl a bit, which is a bit more like a buddlier than lavender, like so. So now I've got this little plant here that looks quite good, and I'm going to put a little bit of blue in there, just tapping it wet on wet, just to give it just a bit more depth by putting a few colours in there, like so. So just let that spread wet on wet style. Now again, I could let this dry, but I'm going to put the leaves in, and the leaves, I'm going to make them a grey kind of grey green kind of colour, and this time it's that leaf. Put the tip down, pull down and make it thinner. Put the leaf down. I'm going to go behind this flower like so. Oops, it's run, but it doesn't matter. Tip down and down, so pull that down, and you can then extend those little bits there. So that's kind of lilac-y, a little bit of lavender if you don't put the leaves around it. I might put a bit more colour into that leaf, because it's just a little bit anemic looking, just a little bit wet on wet style. Put a bit of colour into that leaf just to give it a bit more just a bit more complexity, I suppose. So that's our little lavender leaf. Oh, lavender flower or buddlier flower. And to finish, I'm just going to quickly run through the roses again. They're a lot of fun. There's a couple of ways of doing them, as I showed you last time. I'm just going to get another piece of paper here and just quickly show you roses. Roses are fun, very quick to do once you've got the hang of it. So I'm just getting another piece of paper here. Every floral class I do, I always tend to do some new different flowers. I'm planning a poppy one coming up soon, so just poppies. We'll just do poppies in fields and different ways of doing poppies. I'm developing that class at the moment, but when you do my floral classes, I do tend to have different ones that come up all the time. So, you know, some people do my class a couple of times to learn some different flowers and different techniques. So here we go, the rose. I get my brush loaded up with some crimson, like so, and I'm just putting some little dots, just like that, just some rough little dots in the center, like so. I've got my crimson still loaded up, and now I do semicircles, pressing my brush down and pulling up. So putting the tip of my brush down, pressing and pulling up, and I'm just basically surrounding those circles. A bit of water because it's starting to look a bit dark, and I just start surrounding this this centerpiece just with some petals, and I make them a little bit irregular because I don't want it to be too like a big circle. And next I'm going to get a little bit of blue in here, and I like to put a little bit of wet on wet colouring around the center, just again to give it just a bit more depth and interest, and put a little bit of blue into there. So now I've got a very basic, could pass as a camellia really. I might put a bit of water around the edge just to kind of pull out that pigment. And I've got this very basic rose shape. I then start to apply, and again it's going to be wet on wet. I'm going to apply my leaves, press down, pull out. Press down, pull out. Press down, pull out, and just gradually just putting those kinds of leaves that you get around the base of the flower. And I can put a stalk in. So again, just do a quick stalk. And again, I can add, press down, pull out. I can add some more leaves to my little rose. Press down, pull out. Press down, pull out, maybe slightly different sizes. Press down, pull out. So I've got this little basic rose here. I can put some little thorns on the side if I feel like it. And again, I can then add another rose over here. So dot, 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 dot in the center, like so. Do some quick semicircles around those little dots. And again, I would suggest doing a whole page of these just to kind of just get the hang of it and the feel of it, like so. There's one there. I think that one works a bit better. It's got a bit more white in it, which suggests a little bit of reflection. I'm going to dab some blue in there just to give me a little bit of oomph. The blue here has gone a little bit overboard. I can try and dab it up with a little bit of tissue. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm just going to take that up and just repair it just a little bit if I can with a bit of red just in there. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it ruins the whole thing. You can see little blooms form in the flower. Again, I'm absolutely fine with that. I quite like the blooms, absolutely not a problem in this kind of picture. But as we know from absolute beginners, sometimes blooms can be problematic. So here we go again. I've done my dots. Let's move that over a bit for you. And I'm going to just put those little semicircles. I've done 3 there, you see. Some more coming out, pressing harder with the brush. I like it where a little bit of the paper is exposed as white. Absolutely fine. And again, we just keep curving that little semicircles around. And you might sort of extend the front ones a bit as though the rose is coming forward a bit towards you, like so. And again, I always do like to put a bit of blue in there. That's a taste thing, whether you like that or not. I like it. I like the way it kind of draws you into the center of the rose. And again, once you've got your flowers in place, it's time to press down, pull out, press down, pull out. You can add some more. I'll do that one again. There we go. Press down, pull out. And of course, you can also adapt these leaves. You can put little spikes on the side of rose leaves as well. Sometimes that's it gives you that wild rose look with those little bits that come sticking out. And again, a stalk, and same for this one here. Press down, pull out, press down, pull out, just around. You get those little leaves just surrounding the base of the flower. And again, you know, you might put some up here. Press down, pull out, just at the top of the rose, just to balance out what we're doing. So there are 3 roses. That's the technique. I'm trying to think if we did anything else in class. I think that's pretty much what we did. So hopefully you enjoyed that. My next watercolor class that will be coming up, it's already posted up on the site, is in time for Christmas wreaths, where we do a circle of pine cones and firs and cinnamon sticks, all those kind of Christmassy things, and turn it into a painted watercolor wreath. They're a lot of fun to do and great for Christmas presents and parties, and just to get into the spirit of Christmas. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that quick demonstration, the recap of the flowers we did in Paint Watercolor Calming Flowers, and hopefully see you again.